Welcome to another episode of Mr. Therapist and the Counselor Podcast. We are here to discuss mental health and recovery topics. I'm losing my voice because we're so dedicated to this craft. And our mission is to demystify the process of therapy with raw, authentic, and real conversations. My name is Manny Romero. Jesse O.
This week, it's PTSD Awareness Month. We're going to talk about what PTSD is, how it impacts mental health, those in recovery and addiction, so much more.
Remember to subscribe to the channel
because
I'm losing my voice for y'all.
He's losing his mind.
I can't do it anymore. And
don't play with it, dude.
Yeah, and subscribe and share. And we're going into this, Jesse. What's up?
Here we go, man. Here we go.
What a day.
What a day. Yeah. You know that episode we did on AI and technology, I feel like they're attacking, so...
Oh yeah!
Dude, I know.
We got so many technology issues.
Yeah.
But we're surviving and we're getting through.
Yeah.
And we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it out alive.
Yeah. A couple things I wanted to touch on here. Well, first off, how are you checking in?
My throat is killing me.
I can tell by the hair.
My hair. Did my hair mess up again?
Dude. Don't focus on it. Don't focus on it.
I'm not. I'm just.
Yeah.
Can you fix it?
Oh, it's better. Okay. Good deal. Good job.
Dude, it's been a day.
It's been a day.
Yeah, so that's how I'm checking in. It's been a day, but I'm here with you, bud.
There we go.
And I'm here for you.
Well, that's right. As we talk about checking in on your friends, we pick each other up sometimes when we're down. Yeah. So I'll be your man today.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Talking about you being my man today. Yeah. June is LGBT month, right? It's like, right?
Yeah.
LGBT.
Pride. Yeah, it's Pride.
We celebrate. And honor the people, all the people, the lesbian, gay, trans community.
I can't believe that.
No, bisexual community.
That's good. No, it's good. I'm laughing because he's a whirling dervish today.
Yeah.
I want you to Google that for everybody.
And then it's also Juneteenth. What's Juneteenth? Do you know what Juneteenth
is? It's freedom. Freedom from slavery, African American, a fairly new holiday.
Very cool.
I wish I got that holiday off.
I'm all about freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You are. Yeah. Freedom fries, all kinds of stuff, man. You love freedom, right?
Freedom fries, is that what you said?
Isn't that a thing back in the day? Yeah. Never mind, I don't know. Man, yeah. I'm checking in.
How are you checking in today, bud?
I'm hanging in there.
You totally stolen my little... How are you checking in? Like the last 3 episodes, you've just.
It's a good prompt on the show. Yeah. I really love it. I think that both of us could say it back and forth. So, as I have said, right now I'm finding peace. I think it's a little wild right now in the studio / office, but I am trying to practicing patience. With my mind and my soul and my heart.
You're mostly mad at me, though, I feel like.
I'm not mad at you.
I always feel like you're mad at me.
It's technology. I know it can be a monster. So I wanted to bring up a do you know?
Great.
You know? That's my reference. So as our viewers have known, we've talked about borderline personality disorder. I wanted to bring it up. I saw a very interesting article on how you can tell borderline personality disorders, and they're linked to their musical preferences. Which, being a huge music lover, and I use music to help aid clients in identifying triggers, different emotional awareness overall. I thought it was a fascinating study. Once again, what's borderline personality disorder? We could just briefly say what it is. We've talked about it before.
Yeah, borderline personality disorder is defined as a mental health condition, and I'm reading out here. So, characterized by a pattern. Borderline personality disorder is a mental health condition characterized by a pattern of ongoing instability in moods, behavior, self-image, and functioning.
Yeah.
And so these experiences are often a result of impulsive actions, an unstable relationship with other people.
You have experienced borderline personality clients, so have I, in different ventures throughout our lives. So, but the study was fascinating to me. I want you to reference what the actual the study was. It was a study basically where they played like 14 or 15 like music clips, just short musical clips, as an attempt to see like what emotions were drawn from those from the test. Do you know what the test is actually called? It's like short, or were you able to pull it up?
Yeah, I mean, I got it right here.
What's it called?
Individuals. The test was called something. The
test was called something. It's not the most important thing, but they do this study on this test, and what they had seen that people that more in the high frequency of having borderline personality disorder were more more intuitive music, I guess, like more like jazz and classical. Or on the opposite side, it said people that were probably less on the side of having borderline personality disorder were more on the not as like how do I say this, like a little bit more rebellious side.
Gotcha.
Or like more the heavy metal punk rock, which I thought was fascinating a little bit. I mean, I could see why borderline personality would be more an intense like a classical music, but like I guess I always think of like when you think of heavy metal or punk rock, it's more like a rebellious, and so maybe I'm thinking like antisocial personality disorder or something like that. But
chaos, maybe.
Yeah.
So it says here that they analyzed 549 participants, and they used the short test of music preferences.
That's the name of the test, right?
Yeah, that's the name of the test. And it looks like they found that participants with higher borderline personality symptoms, higher borderline personality symptoms exhibited distinct preferences. Notably,
the jazz and classical, right?
Yeah.
And then, how did they describe listen to punk rock and heavy metal?
They showed less interest in the rebellious genres.
Like basically, I wanted to share the study because I thought it was very interesting. Borderline personality is a very.
You are not borderline, my friend.
Yeah, buddy. There you go.
Congratulations.
And what did it say about revolution on there and Salinas? Did it say anything about high and more potential for what kind of disorder?
Looks like if you listen to Revolution and Selena, you are going far places in life.
Is that a disorder? So,
we love the Romero household. Loves Selena.
The Salinas.
Yeah.
The punk rock.
And we love
the movie?
The Revolution.
Yeah.
Talking about the Selena movie.
That's the reggae music.
And we just
that was good, right?
That was nice.
That's the reggae music.
No, you sound like, dude, Revolution ain't Latino.
I sound like Borat, don't I? I just always sound like Borat.
Yeah, you do.
Because I am the clinical Borat.
No.
I mentioned to you a while back that when you rock those headphones, you're like DJ AM. And I can somehow be the Travis Barker. I don't know how that works. They were a duo, a combo. You know who Travis Barker is?
I think so.
Drummer for Blink-182. I wanted to bring this up, DJ AM. He had passed away a while back, but they became a musical duo, highly successful musical duo. DJ AM was in sobriety. The reason I'm bringing this up is that because besides Manny rocking the headphones, but I listened to a podcast with Travis Barker.
Why are you shouting all these podcasts, dude?
Bro, I listened to ours first. It's on the top of the list every single time.
Good.
I didn't say what podcast he was on. I just said he was on a podcast. Yeah. Maybe it's not ours, but it's not. But Travis
Maybe
Barker,
it is ours. Go check out the
DJ AM and Travis Barker were in this intense airplane crash. The plane caught on fire. 2 people in the plane had died. Travis and DJ AM both escaped the plane crash. Travis Barker actually caught on fire. He actually was running down, I don't know if it was what freeway it was, but he's running down the freeway on fire. He actually said he heard somebody yell out, "Stop, drop, and roll," which is something you're told as like a young kid, like if you're dealing with fires.
Yeah.
And he actually he heard that, and he was able to he remembered that, and he started doing it, and DJ AM helped him. The reason I brought up the story is because I heard that podcast recently. It does tie into our subject today as well. But DJ AM, as he was sober, Travis talked about how he went to a psychiatrist who prescribed, I believe it was Xanax to DJ AM, who was in sobriety. And as you can imagine, the trauma from such an intense event, that would be PTSD probably in its purest form. But he started to take Xanax. That shortly led to a relapse, and then he ended up overdosing and passing away. And Travis talked about his own personal trauma what he had went through the surgery. He actually, when he was in the burn center, his pain tolerance was so high because he had been using opiates up until that time, to where he would wake up in the middle of surgeries like screaming because they were doing things to try to get his skin back on his body because parts of his body were burned. So I bring this up because it does tie into what we do. We talk about like the importance of sobriety. He found a way to be clean, how to get sober from opiates, from even smoking marijuana, and how much that hits changed his life. And you can tell even like physically how well he looks. I mean, he's also like gone into like a more healthier lifestyle when it comes to eating. But I just wanted to share that with you because I thought that was like another story of somebody who went through a traumatic event, who is sober, but then another on the other side of the spectrum, how sad that was that DJ AM, he went through that traumatic event, relapsed, and he's not with us anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, DJ AM.
Yeah, you should look that up though.
I should?
Yeah. You should. So this week on Mr. Therapist on the show. This week on Mr. Therapist and the Counselor podcast, I thought we should give a big shout out to those that are struggling with PTSD. So why? Because it's the awareness month. Yes, it is. And so kind of starting the clock right now. PTSD, the first time I think I've ever heard of PTSD was probably just from people coming back from Vietnam. I heard that was like this traumatic event. And once again,
you were like 30 at that time?
Yeah, I was in Vietnam, motherfucker. Good morning, Vietnam. You only do Michael Scott, right? So, but the first time I heard of it was that, and I remember. So PTSD is what? Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
So that's what I related it to. I think I related it not to Michael Scott or Robin Williams, who said that in Good Morning Vietnam, but I related it to that. It's like, that's severe trauma. That would be right. PTSD. Somebody who went through a graphic, intense, traumatic event, saw things that your common man and woman probably don't go through.
Right.
And when they came back from the war, they didn't have an outlet. They didn't talk about it. They had intense images they saw, vivid dreams. So yeah, that was PTSD. As we've worked in the field, you and I, there's more and more of it. We see different things of it. So before we go into PTSD, anything you'd like to speak on about PTSD? Maybe your experience with PTSD?
Experience working with it, I think, I haven't had any experience. I have never experienced PTSD. I can kind of give you a definition here by the Diagnostic Statistical Manual
Good job,
of Mental Health Disorders.
The Emmanuel?
The Emmanuel
Romero
Mental Health Disorders.
This is good.
It requires an exposure to a actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. And so like you said, that when you say severe trauma, that's kind of what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
And so it's I feel like it's very common among the veterans. It's very common among the first responders. Yeah. Anyone that's experienced sexual abuse, whether you know of it or not, because sometimes it becomes an unconscious event that you've stored away. And then post-traumatic stress disorder is very linked to dissociation.
Yeah. What does it mean to disassociate? Like, what would that mean for a client? If you maybe somebody you've worked with, like, what would be a good example of maybe something they shared with you, if you could recall?
Yeah, I mean, disassociation is
and listen, I know
spacing out.
Say it again. Sorry.
Spacing out, feeling outside of your body. Feeling like you are, some people describe it as feeling like you are outside of your body, sort of observing yourself.
Yeah.
And you just feel disconnected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I could talk about. This one thing I just maybe want to throw out there that's important for me to share is that working with clients that are dealing with addiction, a lot of times, there tends to be they tend to lean on the fact that the addiction is a disease of the brain. So I was born with it biologically, or like maybe it was a gene passed down from a family dynamic. My grandfather had it, so my mother had it, and now I have it. And I think sometimes I've experienced, at least in my line of work, is that clients will tend to minimize like trauma. It's like, I don't have any trauma. Like I'm an alcoholic and I'm an addict. And like, I think a lot of times clients see trauma as those things that you mentioned. Like they think of like I didn't have any sexual abuse, or like I didn't see anybody die in front of me. But trauma could look like different things, and PTSD, it has different forms. So I think it's important to look at that for anybody that might be going through a mental health issue or even like an addiction issue. Trauma plays a big role. It's not the only part, of course not, but like I said, sometimes I think people get a little defensive because they don't want to see us be seen as victims of trauma. It's like, I don't want to be a victim of something. Well, guess what? Like I think it's like I said, it's important to like, it's important to look at everything. So like, I just want to share that real quickly there.
Yeah, having a traumatic experience is a spectrum, and so when PTSD is actually it is a big event, right? It's something that, like we just said earlier, PTSD, it requires you to experience threatened or actual, a perceived or an actual threat to your life, sexual abuse, something in that realm. But there are different ways that you can have. So the DSM has a chapter where it says trauma and stress-related disorders.
The DSM-5, right?
Yeah.
What is that?
I just said it, bro.
Did you say it?
Yeah, I defined it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It is the book that we use as therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists to diagnose people.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention.
I stuttered it too because I was like,
oh, is that what it was?
Like with my voice, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there is a chapter that talks about different trauma-related disorders and stress-related disorders.
Yeah.
So you think about trauma. At the low end of it, it's stress. At the tip end of it is like that post-traumatic stress disorder, right? And so you have your acute disorders, acute stress disorders. You have your adjustment disorders, and then you have the post-traumatic stress disorders. There's much more in between.
Yeah.
But I think some people, when they think trauma, they're thinking PTSD, and you're saying that there's a smaller T's. There's like just a little reactive, the acute stress, the adjustment disorders that like people sometimes have a hard time acknowledging that they're having some symptoms or having a hard time because of an event.
Some people like that idea of like big T's and little T's. I think it's like completely appropriate.
Some people don't like that.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Some people do not like that because they don't want to like undermine somebody's traumatic experience, right? I might share the story in the podcast, but this will be the last time I ever share it again, I swear. We'll be like,
we're not allowed to repeat things.
Yeah, I think it was just, I was running a men's group, and I remember one time somebody shared a story that a very traumatic breakup, and I used the word traumatic breakup. For them, it impacted them significantly, and for them, that led to them using to like cope with their emotions that they couldn't handle, and intrusive thoughts of self. And then I remember he did a share, and then the next person came up and he shared his experience about like just being abused as a child, and the graphicness of it. And I remember afterwards, like it was like a men's trauma group, and we were doing like timelines, which is like an activity where you go through your whole history and look at significant events throughout your life, probably more negative and positive to why you're doing the things you do, right? And I remember the second guy had shared, and the people in the group had come up and were hugging him. And I think it's because he was the second person to share.
Right.
The first person like came to me and he's like, Jess, he's like, that was so stupid that I talked about that. He was like undermining his experience. He was comparing his severe PTSD to like his trauma, and felt very, very small, very little, like, but his story didn't matter. Right. But your story does matter. It's a significant event in your life, and we can't like sweep that under the rug just because it's not as like, maybe, like I said, this war story.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Have you had any experience before where you've minimized going through something?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to see, like, give you a real genuine answer, or not some kind of like to keep the conversation going.
It can even be like, honestly, like maybe like you're going through something challenging in your relationship, or where you're just sort of like in that almost like that denial place of like, no, like things are good, like I'm okay, like, or maybe you had a tough group, or something like that, where you're sort of like trying to pick yourself up, and try not to be overtaken by like the fact that you had a bad experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I'll speak. I don't want to speak for everybody out there, but I think it's a common trait in a lot of people is that we keep going through things. We try to like. We want to disregard like the uncomfortable experiences. So I think I shared recently on the podcast when we did the Quiet on Set podcast, and we talked about that. And then that same week, I'd working with a client who was dealing with his daughter had went through some like sexual trauma, and it was just like I felt like just getting heavier and heavier on me. I did share with somebody like what was going on, but I don't think I put too much weight into it. Not to use that terminology again. But I think a lot of times
Why not?
Because I think a lot of times human beings specialize in, like I said, just adversity. So it's just like, I ain't got time for this. I got time to like take the next step forward. And that's what we do a lot of times. Is we keep moving forward and we don't want to look back, but unfortunately like there's a hook in us that's holding us back.
So where do you think that comes from? Like the I don't have time to process this. I have to keep moving forward.
It's the
because that's a universal feeling. Yeah.
I think that's what another motive behind this podcast is to introduce the fact that we need to talk about things. We need to push things down. So
even the counselor and Mr. Therapist go through like this feeling of like I don't got time to talk about this. I don't want to burden you maybe with this.
Right.
That'd probably be a big one for me. It's like the burden of like wasting your time with something that like I can stuff this down, like I'm cool.
This is another thing that we're going to continue to experience. If it's culturally, if it's like gender wise, like these are all things that I grew up on and that I work on, but the work is still in progress. So it's like this will be a common thread throughout my life, and I don't want to make it sound like my life is miserable because that. But it's just a commonality that I think a lot of people share. It's just like the day-to-day process is like go to your job and make your commitments. And
I have a story of an acute stress response story, and it was a smaller T, right? So to some people maybe you wouldn't even respond this way, but I was on the way to work one time, hitting the 405. And as I was driving, I saw this motorcycle pull up right next to me and crash into the car. It was either right in front of me or a couple cars in front of me.
Yeah.
And so I saw it like completely right in front of me. The motorcyclist flew off the bike. We all stopped. Went to go check in on him. Called the police. Had him not move just in case anything was broken, and then I had to do a police report. Right?
Yeah.
The police came and questioned me.
This is all in the morning.
It's all in the morning, right before going to work.
Right, that's not your normalcy, right?
Not my normalcy. Yeah. So I go in and I'm like, dang. So I text my boss. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be late. I witnessed a big accident, and I'm just filing a police report. And then I go to work. And I'm like jittery, and I'm like I almost feel this energy where I'm like excited. I have this excitement. I'm jittery. I have this high almost, and my partner at the time, Beth Barber, she's like, hey, she's like, what? She's like, you don't look right. Like you look like you're just kind of like. She's like, are you okay? Like you should go home. And I remember thinking like, no, I'm not gonna go home. Like nothing happened to me. Like I'm fine. But I did feel off, you know? I felt like inappropriate to like, I was going into a group with a family who were going to grieve that their family member was struggling with addiction, and I had to help them through that process. That's a very vulnerable process. And so I realized, I'm like, wait, like I can't match that energy right now.
Right. Yeah.
Like I can't. So I went into, it took some time, but I went in to ask for to take the day, but I didn't even do it for me. I did it because I'm like, I can't be in here.
Right, yeah.
I'm not going to perform. I'm not going to be able to create the safe space for the clients. I did it for the clients more than I did it for myself. Yeah. But it was this feeling of like, this isn't big enough for me to take time off.
Yeah. And then I think that goes back to my thought of like people just tend to minimize like certain impactful events in their life, and I think we're just set up to do that. Like, and we're just And that's, I mean, there's a change in the society and the culture and the world that we're like, we got to look at these mental health things. That's why we have like a month like PTSD Awareness Month. So, because I do think like that is still very true, is like people see PTSD as a specific thing, or maybe they see addicts and alcoholics as a specific thing.
Right.
So depression as a, all that stuff is just like, getting more education and awareness on that it's a very important thing. I wanted to throw out the survivor's guilt thing just because it was something I knew about PTSD at one point in time.
I'm going to keep us alive. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Survivor's guilt was something that I was introduced to even back in the day. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I had a close friend who he was in a car accident. He was driving the car, and there was 3 other people, I believe, in the car, and he was the only person that survived of the group. Of course, there's going to be trauma with that because people had died and passed away.
That's wild, dude.
But I also experienced this also working in recovery, as a lot of people will see overdoses. They'll see somebody die from a heroin or fentanyl overdose right next to them, and they'll go, it should have been me. Why was my life spared? Survivor's guilt, I think, initially came through, like, once again, through military, first responders, like having somebody. I had a client who said, hey, I had a friend. I walked in the same direction as my friend, my partner, my buddy, my peer. He stepped in a certain direction. Shortly after, his same friend, I believe it was in Desert Storm, stepped in the same direction. He stepped on a mine, and he passed away tragically from that event. Once again, it's like, why wasn't it me? Why was I spared? Why was my life spared? And the fact is, like, that having that guilt of being able to survive through life, and that's probably, that's a big thing that I see it in clients' experience as well, of just like, it should have been me, particularly if you're in a very dark place mental health wise or addiction wise, and you just don't see any like real understanding of why you get to live when you don't even want to live, and other people pass away. So that's another thing related to trauma, PTSD.
This is one of those diagnoses that's a little scary because the symptoms with PTSD are so strong, and prevalent, that this is a population that is high risk for dying, for taking their life. And so I think it's something to be super aware of, like that statement, right? The checking on your friends, like it couldn't be more true, or more. I wouldn't, we got to pressure you almost to like make sure to do that with someone who might be experiencing some PTSD, because most of the time there is that sort of minimizing of symptoms, and the symptoms can be so severe that you don't even talk about, like feeling depressed, feeling like you want to end it all. A lot of times motivated by just wanting to escape the symptoms. What can we go over some of the symptoms of PTSD?
Would you mind?
So I think there's a ton. There's like, it can look so different. Symptoms of PTSD: jumpiness, jitteriness, depression, anxiety. You can go into even like paranoia, and so it's a lot of different variations of symptoms. Insomnia, hypersomnia that you can experience, and events triggering you. We talked about anniversary reactions, right? You can have those responses, and so those are so intense for this population. It's tough.
A common thing that somebody could have when they're had a traumatic event, or even if there's a sense of like maybe I guess I'll stick more on the PTSD thing. So I've read that like intrusive thoughts, how that impacts somebody that has PTSD. It's almost like the trauma is happening to you still. You could still feel like the event is like it's right there. Right. So and that, once again, that kind of goes into those signs of like having vivid like images of the event. So I've even I remember I have this exercise that I practice with the clients is and I asked them to find a way to like not disassociate, but not focus on one thing. I say, I want you to not focus on this one thing I've presented to the group. And I've had clients say, well, one thing that helps me not focus on one thing is I'll use my trauma, because I can get so enmeshed in that like event and that experience and how real and raw I could even feel in that moment. which to me, I was like, oh shit. I was like, I didn't see that direction, but it is. It's a common thing.
What do you think about exposure? Like, I guess two things. What do you think about exposure therapy when it comes to like, I guess, you know what? Let me take that back. What do you think about like having someone share their story when it comes to treating PTSD?
I think that it's a powerful initiative you can use, but the person has to be in the best place, because I think that some people can really share their trauma, like they're reading from a script, and I want the emotion attached to that. And it takes time to do that, but some people just just share their story, like we talked about on the anniversary reactions. I was telling you stuff about 9/11, and then this wasn't a traumatic event for me, anything like that, but like that's like kind of, you can easily share that story. Like I have no problem sharing. I hear that a lot. I'm like, great. But your problem is feeling, right? Is actually dealing with the experience.
There's two different experiences, right?
It is 100%. So
and the therapeutic work probably happens in the feeling, right? In the scariness of the feelings that come up when you share your story. Do you still do first steps when you're doing treatment?
There is, I still do some type of form or fashion. So it's kind of more of like what he's talking about is like the step one. What I do is like more of like a kind of an autobiography / like Q&A about their history.
People share their story about.
They share the story, and you ask questions and you dig. So
when you are going through that process, what considerations as a counselor, clinical considerations, do you take to prepare the client who's about to share their story?
That's a good question.
Like, what's your process there? Like, you just show up one day and like randomly select, you, Jimmy, share your story today.
You try to give them like the prompts, the questions, the things that we're going to talk about, and I think things that I just relate to anybody is like just try to be as genuine as you can in this moment. Sometimes I feel like I shortchange some clients because I do work in like a treatment program where it's just kind of like, this is an assignment and you have to complete it. And it's hard to get that really understanding of things in the first 30 days anyway. So I think there's an avoidant response to trauma, right? And so that you don't want to go towards it, you want to go away from it. But so the pressure of like saying, hey, this is something we're going to complete together, I think it's important pressure. How you talk about it is important. You give them the questions ahead of time. That sounds strategic. So that they're prepared, so that they're not feeling on the spot, so they can process what this group activity is going to be like. I know we've talked about this, and I think at the time I probably was defensive about it because I like really think working on trauma is important, and I'd be defensive about it. What I'm trying to get to is like these treatment programs that you go to, you're not going to get a lot of trauma work done in the first 30 days. Like, it's just hard to do that. And it's also like you're assigned somebody to work with. And then with that being said, like that person's not going to be your long-term therapist. But it takes work and it takes time if you're willing to commit to that. It's not an easy thing to do, to deal with your trauma. We've talked about EMDR therapy on here, which is the eye motion.
EMDR? Eye movement desensitization, re-desensitization.
Thanks for cleaning that up. But no, I think that there's some really heavy things that needs to be done. And but I also recognize why somebody can just spit out their story. It's like, almost get off my fucking back, because I don't want to dig into this. This is my life every single day, and what I see and what I feel, and I don't want to think more about it, but put more work into it,
So disclaimer here with my next question for you. We're not giving therapy advice. This isn't therapy. This isn't supposed to replace therapy. So go check in with a professional, talk to someone. But if somebody were to want to work on their trauma, they're not ready to go to therapy, is there a form of the first step that they could do themselves? Would you where they kind of like write their story down to just as a level of processing what happened to them? Like, is that going to be helpful for them?
I think so.
Should they not do that alone? Should they prepare in some way before they do something like that, or what? I
think having like a professional working hand in hand with somebody, like I mentioned, if it's a timeline, if it's an autobiography.
How would you do those? Like a timeline or an autobiography?
You would just a timeline would be look along the lines of significant events in your life, talking about like on this date and this happened, like breaking down significant events in your life, traumatic events in your life They might be little T's or big T's, but how that impacted you, and taking a look at that, and once again working hand in hand with a professional. If you're assigned to a different like treatment program, or you have an individual private practice therapist like that you could do the work on, but somebody that you can have support with such a heavy assignment, because it's not something that's having accountability around you when you're doing that. I think is something to practice.
Yeah.
So,
and then I think like part of that. The point of that is to like notice what comes up emotions wise for you. So it might be scary to do this, but like I think monitoring that, like if you start noticing shit just gets really scary. You know what? People might just be scared listening to this conversation.
Yeah.
Like if someone's listening to this and you have some trauma that you're trying to work through, and you're just starting to notice your heart's be pounding a little bit faster, you're sweating a little bit, you're getting a little nervous. Maybe that's enough exposure for you right there.
Right.
Like maybe that's enough. Of like hey, okay, like just sitting with this, just noticing it, understanding that it's here, like that is part of the work, right? And I'm again, disclosure, we're not your therapist, this isn't treatment, this isn't therapy. I'm not saying do this, but if you're noticing that that's happening right now, like talk to a professional then. Like at that point, like, oh man, like, you know, get into therapy because you can do some work with this that and more than we can give you right now, like and guided, you'll be guided better, and you're not going to be put in a position where you're possibly in harm in some way.
So no, well said. I think that's I heard this a long time ago. It's like wound or trauma is like a wound, right? Like when you finally decide to attend to that wound, you really got to it's going to be open, but you've got to really clean it out. You've got to take the time in the process. And like I said, I've worked for systems where it kind of rushes the process at times, and a lot of times I don't know, maybe selfishly I look for results. But as I went throughout my time in the field and working with mental health and addiction, I realized that it's a slow build and steady as she goes kind of thing.
Medication is another form of treatment for PTSD. You got some people really need sleep medications because part of the symptoms are nightmares, night terrors, and so sleep medication is an important treatment at times. Obviously consult with a psychiatrist or a mental health professional before you do get that prescribed or look into that. But you don't condone medications sometimes. That was strong.
Again, specific things. I think once again, as I started this whole story about DJAM, psychiatrist prescribed Xanax to an addict. Like that's not a good fit. Now maybe he was dishonest to that person, but or overprescribed society. Somebody with severe mental health issues, severe trauma. No, let's try different things. But medication is part of the solution. It's not the full solution. So.
I think there are clients who will get some medication and think that maybe that's it. That's where the treatment ends.
Right.
Medications is a start, and it's a part.
It's a
part. More than a start, right? Because it's the start might be awareness, but it's a part of treatment, and we're advocates for you getting into a room to talk about things. So
anything else on this? You talk about grounding techniques too, right? That was important to bring up briefly.
So I mean, as we talk about some of the things that could help, I think grounding techniques. If I had a client in here working, I think part of our treatment plan would be to come up with coping skills. For the symptoms of PTSD. So again, we talked about disassociation is a big part of this. Avoidance is a big part of this, and so learning to sit with emotions.
Right.
Some grounding techniques are. Have you heard of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
No.
Very popular.
Say it.
So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is to activate your senses and to help you get in your body, away from dissociation and more grounded. You very carefully look at for 5 things that you can find around you.
Oh yeah,
And so you look at, for instance, the door, and you describe the door in full detail, right? The patterns that it might have, the color that it is, the material that it is. Then you look for 4 things that you can hear, right? Or is it 4 things that you can touch, right? So you can touch your jeans, you can touch the couch, and you spend 30 seconds just feeling it and describing the feeling. 3 things that you can hear. So I can hear my voice, I can hear the vacuum that's going on outside, and really sit with that for 30 seconds and just notice it. 2 things that you can taste, and so maybe you taste something that you just ate, or you grab a piece of tissue and you put it in your mouth and you taste that a little bit. 1 thing that you can smell. And so it's just to activate the senses.
Yeah, there you go. No, after you said that, not to be like, I know what you're talking about, but I do recognize that. That's something, a great grounding technique right there. So
breathing techniques are also important. We talked about block breathing before. We talked about all these. We can provide some resources as well in the notes for you guys. So,
anything else on this before we wrap it up?
There's so much on PTSD.
It is,
I feel like it sucks because we've challenged ourselves to fit in something in 30 minutes, and so I walk away a lot of times feeling like, man, are we doing justice to these topics? But just know that this isn't everything. Mm-hmm. Just know that there's a lot more with this that we haven't gone over. That's why it's important to really.
So keep tuning in. That's what we're trying to tell you, because we're going to continue to unfold and discuss, and we're trying to be advocates of you going out there and doing some work.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to wrap this up soon. Remember to subscribe to the channel, guys. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a follow. Share it with your friend.
Yeah.
Share it with your mama. Share it with your daddy. With your cousin.
All right.
And if you have any questions about PTSD, are going through symptoms, if you related or connected to anything we talked about, put it in the comments. Let us know. Give us some questions. We'd love to hear your story.
So and always, as we try to add at the end, is checking on your friends.
That's right.
Got my name, tag it home today, and Jack greet you like I give a fuck. Are you surprised by that?